large language models as well. So these are more the AI classic models. Although we did read yesterday that it is using the transformer type of models, which is good. But it's still, it's pretty fast now. If you're using, for example, for a Q&A type bot, that can be quite useful because then you can generate your questions and answers, and basically that way customers can ask a variety of questions and get an answer. So you don't necessarily have to have just one Q&A name value pair. You can actually have multiple questions that result in the same answer as well, which is quite good. I'm not sure why, but we've got people coming into the call, but they're not getting in. So I wonder what's gone wrong today. I wonder whether they went into yesterday's call. I'm just going to have a quick look, see if I can see anything. Chat from yesterday. Day 2. No, I haven't seen anyone turn up for this one. But it looks like people are having trouble getting in. So it says that they've joined. Oh, there you go. So a few people coming in now. So Alago, welcome back.
Hello, good morning.
Hello. I'm just starting to go through the recap from yesterday.
Cool.
Yeah. So the only problem was I noticed that Magda tried to come in, but it didn't quite load for her. So maybe she had to go and get something, or maybe she had to go and get breakfast. Not sure what happened there. But anyway, we'll have a look. So one of the things we looked at yesterday, we are noting that they are using Transformer behind the scenes. And they are still the AI classic sort of services, the AI services that we've had for years and years and years, even, predating, back to, I don't know, when I started using them was probably about, 7, 8 years ago. I think I started using them as well. So they've been around for a long time, and I remember when Google just started to bring in their services and their data services, and learning a lot about those as well. So I find, I don't know why, I would go back to places like the Google Cloud, and I just had more trouble with the Google Cloud. It's probably advanced since now, but one of the big advantages I suppose the Microsoft Cloud has is this introduction of the resource groups. So if anyone's used the resource groups, of course you would have used the resource groups, because you actually group all your resources into one area, for example, give it a good name for a project or something like that, and then you've got everything grouped together. The big advantage is when you want to deprecate those, because of course over time services become deprecated, and then you need to replace them with other things. But also you might just create a proof of concept, try it out, and then destroy it afterwards. And that's what I tended to do in the early days of AI. We were just doing proof of concepts more than anything else. And that's where the resource group is really, really handy. So you go back in and then you just delete that, and it cleans up all the resources under it. So I always found that a big advantage on the Microsoft Cloud, and that's because they actually were later to the scene, so they had to think about some of these things as well and how they're going to work in practice. So yeah, I think that's a really big plus for the Microsoft side. So just back to getting to the AI Classic, we've had those in for 8, 9, 10 years, and some of them have actually gone through some revamps over the years. So we know that it used to be called Q&A Maker in the old days, so now it's just question and answering under the language service. And of course we used to have Lewis, which has now moved into language understanding. So that one has changed quite a bit as well, the interfaces, things like that. But one of the things we noted there was you can have multiple questions that will result in the same answer from that Q&A bot. And that's actually quite a good thing because you're grouping a whole lot of different questions that a user might utter, and then it can transform into that answer. But of course, one of the things we said yesterday was it's really, really useful for some of the later other transformer models like the large language models. So in this example, you might actually have something like a question which is what is the latest MS Surface product? And of course, you might have an answer. That's your question. So your answer might be something like Copilot plus PC. So that one, I've actually got one of those. They're really superb. And that'll actually allow you to translate this into user equals, and then you can put that content in there, and then you could say, for example, assistant equals, and then you could put that content in there, Copilot plus PC. So that's a really interesting one because then you can generate a whole lot of these, and then you can do that as few-shot learning. So we're looking at few-shot learning today for your Azure OpenAI. So we have this concept of the playground that we'll be using today. And you'll actually see at the bottom, if you're doing this via code, that's what it would look like. If you're using the SDK, you would have a whole sequence of these. And then basically there you can submit that and get a response back, which would be your final assistant response. So it's sort of like this when you have a look at it in the code. So I'll get you an example later on as well. So it'll say user equals, say system equals, and then some sort of system message. So you are a surface sales expert. Put the quotes there. And then you would have user equals, what is the latest? And then you would say assistant equals Copilot plus PC. And then the user might say, how much RAM does it have? Unfortunately, it's always the black ones that actually have the most RAM, which is really sad to me because I've got a blue one. Equals, and then you've got, it's either 16 GB through to 64 GB sort of thing. And I looked the other day and the black one's actually at 64. I was very disappointed. I don't know why they're like discriminating against colour there. So like a nice blue or gold would be really nice. What colours do they come in? Do they come in assistant? So you can see this sort of discussion. You're actually setting these up as, arrays of basically a whole lot of conversations. So you'd actually, this would make up all of your prompt basically. And then you say assistant equals, right, so it comes in blue. Well, it's actually a different name of blue, gold, silver, and black. And then, of course, you can keep asking questions to the cows come home. And, of course, all of this actually sets the persona. And for the large language models, this sets up examples of how you want to get the AI to actually respond. So how you want to you're grounding it a lot better. So every little bit ounce of extra information you put into a prompt you get back, right? As far as it being more accurate and grounded and less likely to hallucinate. So usually, and I am going into today's stuff a little bit now, usually you would start with this sort of prompt engineering. So I wouldn't even consider this prompt engineering yet. Prompt engineering is more about the system message and also about just putting enough information into your prompt and saying things like, if don't make something up if you don't know what the answer is, because it will tend to try to please you as much as possible and give you some nasty sort of answers that aren't correct. The next level up is few shot. So this is an example of few shot learning. So this is particularly a good example there. So you can either put that in the playground just to test it out, or you could use this in the SDK. So we've got an example there of the SDK in your code, Python in particular there. And then you would look at some other options as well. So if we said prompt engineering, that's writing a good prompt. Don't make anything up. Don't make up stuff. Give it some examples in the prompt. So not these sort of examples, but just say, I want you to answer, for example, in the form of a table or a list or something like. Give it better directions, and also cues are another thing that you can do. So we'll talk about cues later. Few shot learning, and then you would move to a RAG model, and that's where you actually bring your data. And then, of course, the next level up is fine tuning. And I was just poking around this morning, just seeing if I could get that to work pretty easily, but there's a lot involved with that, because that's actually like getting enough data to ground the model, to tune it, to write it from scratch almost. And then there is the brand new LM. So we'll say LM rather than large language model, because it could be a small language model or a large language model there. So that's usually, and the reason that's a pyramid is because this is typically what people do more often down the bottom. And as you go up the tree, less and less people do this. So this is usually the tech companies doing this one, and some of the big consultancy companies as well. So I think, for example, Accenture are writing one. I know Oracle were quite late to the piece, so I saw a lot of advertisements for large language model data scientists getting over there in Oracle and writing some of those. So you see the tech companies, of course, all big, Facebook and places like AWS, of course, and Google are all got their own as well. So that's basically what we look at when we look at these different examples, and just a little bit of a heads up on how we're going to be using large language models there, and how most people use them, I suppose, in general. So I suppose the other things we talked about yesterday, apart from using perhaps the data coming out of the Q&A bot, and then using that as few shot learning, the other thing we talked about was entities, utterances, and intents. And of course, you would put a few examples of, maybe 5 to 10 examples of utterances, and then the model itself would be able to, using natural language, be able to work out the correlation between the intents and the utterances. So if someone said turn on the light, then it would result in device on, for example, and that would result in calling a function in your code that would actually go and turn on a particular device, and then pass that as possibly a parameter as a device name, so that you could know which particular item to turn on. And like I said yesterday, if you're turning on the full light, that's going to be a different capability, because you're going to have to go and set the automation to turn on something that's on a particularly different other automation system as well. So our system has actually got, for our pool, has actually got automation associated with it. So that one's going to be a different function probably to another function. And then, of course, off is going to be another one as well. And then you're going to have other things that you want to have in your intents. So you could be booking a flight, and you might also want to get insurance at the same time. So just a couple of there would be flight, book flight, and take out insurance. Or at least get a quote. Maybe you only want a quote. Then it could be the different intents there for the basic bot that you would be using. And of course, we saw entities was a really nice way. So if you said, I should use the eraser. We've been a scribbler from way back. Turn on the light. Lights. So you would then, oops, I didn't even know you could do timer in there. That's something new today. Why are you not going to, oh, it's toggle. Turn on the light. Stop that. And this would be the entity. So the entity in this example, gee, it's a messy chalkboard today, isn't it? The entity for this example would be, you would have a list, which would then have things like light, pool light, lamp, maybe even you have different commands for that, TV, radio, stereo, all this sort of thing, and locked door, locked door, and then you're held at the ransom of the automation. If you've ever seen that episode of The Simpsons, when they actually had this food process that would get rid of all the garbage at the end of the day from the table, and of course it was trying to attack people as well at the end of the day. Our worst fears are AI coming true. All right, so that was a little bit about what we looked at yesterday. Hey Bo, now I wanted to tell you, hey.
Sorry, I got those project stand-ups and some urgent customer calls. I really ashamed that I couldn't join much. Yeah,
we know this.
Sorry,
yeah.
You got something you want to tell me?
Yeah, I was going to say with this one, it did say that the later versions of language understanding and Q&A were built on transformers. So they are starting to replace the existing ones with more, much more modern models.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think they used those computer science historical names, right? Ada something, Ada Lovelace, and I was reading books. And I realized, okay.
Yeah, so
the model names
models
were actually the early 18th century, 17th century sort of a lady who was envisaging a compute machine. That's where the Ada comes from. And I think they're replacing Ada with some newer models or newer names of computer scientists.
Yeah, that's quite good. Cool. Yeah, I like that. So Ava Lovelace, that's a good story as well. I didn't even realize there were such women in the past who were writing code and things like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, she was actually a foundation layer in terms of envisioning a machine that can do this. Before her, that was, people don't really think that's even possible.
And is that is that where, because she wrote programming language, is that where, I think Ada was one of the ones they told us about at university, but I never knew the story behind it. I think Ada was a language back then, but yeah, we've got a model that's actually called Ada now as well.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's good to see the history of where we came from.
Oh, it's been honored by engineers. Yeah.
Very nice. And you don't see a lot of women getting interested in this sort of thing, especially in those days. So
exactly, it makes the programmer's life less boring, right? So, I think it's 20 years ago when I first started my computer science sort of career and IT career, and you end up with a lab full of guys with half of them bald, right? But these days you got a lot more ladies in the IT industry. You can do lots of things, right? So gender balance.
I think I remember in our university, our bachelor's computer science is sitting around, and it was mostly men, so there weren't many women, but the women got a lot of attention.
Yeah, exactly.
weren't enough to go around.
No.
So that's why whenever they had their social nights, they used to invite the nursing degrees as well, so then it was more balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. It happens in every university. Yeah.
Good one. We've all got a common tale there, so good one. Thank you, Hebo, and
Thank you.
thanks for coming back.
Oh yeah, well, I really appreciate your knowledge and teaching. It's just for us hard to block the whole day.
Yeah. No.
And things come up. Yeah.
Yeah, don't feel bad. We know people have to come and go. I'm pretty realistic. At first you go, oh, why is that? Why are people staying? When you first start training, and then you go, yeah, people got lives.
Yeah, there are always some sort of emergencies and dumpster fires here and there.
Yeah.
If you're working with customers,
It's strange when you think about emergencies and things like that. We always used to say this is a disaster, I think, but really this is small potatoes if you're working in health or something like autonomous vehicles and they're running people over. These are pretty small potatoes.
Exactly.
There's money involved.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Cool.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah.
All right. So today, that's okay. Good on you. Thank you for coming on camera. All right. So today we're going to be looking at generative AI. So this is the exciting day for Azure OpenAI. I was just poking around just to see what the differences were between AI Studio, because I haven't really used AI Studio as much as I use Azure OpenAI Studio and machine learning. So both of those cover off everything. But now they're talking about creating projects, and then once you create projects in AI Studio, what you'll see is that if you do want to fine-tune some of the models, you'll have a lot bigger breadth and depth of models there to choose from. So if we were just looking at Azure OpenAI, of course, it's only the OpenAI tools that we would be using now for that. So you can see it's a subset of that, all those large language models that we have. So let's have a look at generative AI. We'll get started with how you go and create one. Now, you no longer have to fill in a form for this. I have a feeling that if you want to use some of the latest ones, so we've actually got a newer version of Omni, which is it's got audio in it as well. That's the latest version coming from OpenAI. And like I said, we're very, very lucky. When you contrast it to things like Databricks, for example, Databricks, we usually have to wait about 3 weeks when Spark release a new version of a particular engine or the clusters or anything like that. We have to usually wait about 3 weeks. I think AWS gets it within 2 weeks. It just depends how much checking they do behind the scenes. So once Databricks releases a new version, we usually have to wait. But with OpenAI, we actually get it the same day, so the same time as they release it. So we actually had Omni, I think, before OpenAI were able to give it to their paid customers. So that's an interesting one. There was a free version of it open to people, which was a cutback version, I believe. I could be wrong about that. But what's really good is that fantastic partnership we have with OpenAI. And we've been giving them the sort of engineering power to be able to use this. We had our own large language models, but they weren't nearly as good as the OpenAI models. But our smaller language models are quite competitive. So the other thing there is prompt engineering. So we want to be able to. I just drew that pyramid before of where prompt engineering fits in that. It's really your first port of call. That's one thing you can control a little bit more. I'll give you some tips on how to do that. But by and large, we are starting to see more people move to RAG models, of course, and also the fine-tuning. So we are seeing more of that happening now. So that's bring your own data, is that RAG model there. So you can easily bring your data in, load it up. You will need a search, and you'll also need some storage for that probably. Not necessarily. The other thing with the search is if you were to do it in Azure Machine Learning, you can actually use indexes that are open source, and therefore, it's a lot more cheap and cheerful to actually get started with that. But if you want to go to the full enterprise scale solution, then AI search is going to be useful for you there. Okay, so let's get started. You don't need to fill in a form anymore. So you used to go and have to apply for access, and of course it was limited to just logins that were related to a corporation. I'm not sure whether it's still that case, because we don't fill in a form anymore, but there you can actually go and get kickstarted at work to try and work out how to use this tool. And of course, a lot of our customers attended some of the courses early on called AI-102. So we had a lot of private deliveries for that in the early days with, some of the big banks and some of the big tech companies in Australia and communication companies. So we actually kicked that off very early, and they've all started to set up proof of concept areas for people to try this out as well. Because we know in the financial services, it can take quite a lot of jumping through hoops to actually get something new like that to come in. The security concerns are, enormous. I've worked in a lot of financial companies, and the lead time is quite large. And the bigger the company, usually the larger the lead time as well. So they're all starting to just get into that now. So back in September, when we started to release these, a year and a half ago, something like that, maybe more. I can't remember exactly when the date it came out, but they're all starting to come up to speed now. So we'll have a look at the studio as well, but of course you can use you can use AI Studio 2 now, which you couldn't do in the early days. It was in preview for a long time. Okay, so some of the history there, and actually Abo took us down some of the history with Lovelace in the older days. But we know that it was started around in Dartmouth around 1950s. The term artificial intelligence was coined, I think, 1956. And that's basically where it all grew. But of course, during the years, we've had huge ups and downs, huge winters with AI. And we're bound to go through another winter right now where, it's still generative AI is hallucinating. We need to be able to ground that. But what's really interesting, I suppose, is the speed at which this is being generated. So barely a week or a day would go by without a big announcement from OpenAI, for example, or Google's Gemini came out, all this sort of cool stuff. The small language model came out. So if you think back to machine learning in the 1990s when Kasparov was Big Blue beat Kasparov, I suppose that wasn't an example of machine learning, but then it actually IBM kept playing with that, got it to play itself, and then of course that was a very good example of one of the first machine learning examples. And then we went into deep learning, so that's where the Google people actually got together and defeated, I think what was his name, was the Go champion. So they had beat a few different champions on the way, but then finally in 2017 they beat Key J, who was the number one AlphaGo master. So again, that was a very good example of deep learning and machines playing each themselves. And of course, this is where we started to see the introduction of the neural network. And then, of course, now today in 2017, we had a lot of breakthroughs. And 2021 was a particularly good breakthrough in the DAL-E. So we often saw that actually coming into variety shows like John Oliver's show. I remember seeing that for the first time, where he was going to marry cabbage, and they had a big ceremony, and all the images were generated for that. It was pretty cool. And in the early days of DAL-E, you were actually able to generate that really well, and then they started to lock it down, so celebrities were no longer allowed to be actually generated in there and all that sort of thing. So ethics started to play a big hand in things. So it's a bit of a whirlwind. We're very lucky to actually be doing IT at this point in time. But of course, we think, where is it going next? And of course, how is it going to affect our jobs? So we talked about that a bit on Monday. So this used to be the way that you applied. You don't really need to do that anymore, but you can see the OAI apply, where you had to ask a lot of questions. You can put it on certain subscriptions automatically, but these days you don't actually need that, so we can ignore that now. No longer worrying about that. What else have we got there? So when you want to go and create, you can create it via the CLI, but more than not, most people, of course, it's a bit of a proof of concept at the moment. We're not standing up huge amounts of these at the moment, so we tend to just use the user interface for that, but we could have used ARM templates and all that sort of deployment method. So same sort of thing as our other services. And then when you get that stood up, one of the things which is a little bit disappointing is the completions. So early on in the piece, a lot of us were using completions, and there were some really nice examples out of the box. So email completions, SQL completions, all that sort of thing. But they've all sort of fallen by the wayside because you really need an older version of ChatGPT, so earlier than Turbo, to actually do that now. So that's kind of become redundant, I think. They haven't removed it. I'm not sure why they haven't removed it, but it won't work for anything you deploy at the moment. So if you've got an older OpenAI service, I don't have it anymore. Ours had to all actually be removed about 6 months ago. We actually started with fresh subscriptions again. You can't actually use that. So mostly concentrated effort is going to be in there around the chat. And of course, you can use 3.5 Turbo and later, but there's also some opportunities to use some of the older ones as well in there. And of course, the first time you go and generate a DALL-E image, it goes and deploys automatically for you, the DALL-E model. And then you've got some other assistants, so custom and Copilot-like experiences where you can stand this up pretty quickly. But I don't know. I suppose it depends whether you want to use pro code or low code or no code. You could get away with no code for that. If you're using Copilot Studio, you can do it in there, and that's probably the preferred method to use it now for low code. But if you're using a coded example, then you could still use the assistance one. So that's still in I'll double check whether that's still in preview. It might be out of preview. So if you go down here in the menu, you can actually see a whole lot of different things you can do also in the canvas there. But you can go and deploy various models. Depends on your quota. You can have a look at the whole list of models, and you'll see a lot of those early 3s are gone now. The data files that you want to use for your RAG, and also what quotas you've got. Now that differs per region. So like I just checked this morning, I went to set up a fine-tuning example, and we don't have any to show yet, so we can have a look at that together, explore that together anyway. But with the fine-tuning example, I had to go and set it up in Sweden, so central Sweden for that. And that's dependent on how much GPUs are distributed to each of the regions as well, and how much space we've got as well. Oh, not GPUs so much. Depends what you're using, whether you're using Omni or not. And then there's the content filters there. Now, content filters are really important. I don't think they're in preview anymore, but that's a really good way to actually limit what Copilot can do. So it can also protect against injection as well, prompt injection. And of course, the racy content, the unethical sort of questions that people ask. So if I was to, for example, I did one the other day, an example where you put in what do the Scottish people like? It would answer, very nicely. They're located in Scotland, they have this rich history, blah, blah, blah. And then when you put in put in a content filter and ask the same question, it won't give you an answer because they would consider that to be racial profiling or something like that. So shouldn't have. Just, these sorts of things are really important for the future to make sure that things are nicely grounded. So you can create your own content filters, and that way you can actually limit the sort of questions that people ask, but also protect you from injection as well. Sorry about that. All right, so So Daniel's just typing. Did you have a question? Oh no, that's okay. He's gone. All right. So the type. If anyone's got any questions, just yell out as we go. I don't mind. All good. Right. The types of generative AI models. So we've got the older GPT-3. We've got the GPT-4. And the Omni with audio as Omni with audio is the other one at the moment. So really nice versions here. You can see some examples there of models, but there's a longer list now. We've got embeddings as well. So we've kept some of the older models which actually do embeddings. For example, Ada, which is the one they were talking about before. And embeddings allow you to provide a number like we sort of did with when you think about it, you have to put things in a certain codified way to actually work with the model rather than working against it. So this is an example where you would give it a number that would basically translate the words into a number, and then that was that 3D space I was talking about on Monday, where if something is close to something else in that 3D space, then it could be related. And it could very much factor into when trying to work out the probabilities to choose the next word in the sentence to generate an answer, then that actually factors into it. But you can pass embeddings in there in order to, speak the computer's language, I suppose, make it more efficient and codify that. So we used to do that with convolutional neural networks when, I don't know whether we still do, probably still do, when you want to be able to take an image that's quite large, so it might be like a certain number of pixels, and then you would take the values for each pixel. So in the color scheme, you'd have 4 values in total, and then you would take the 4 pixels next to it, and then you would average that out. So that wouldn't change the image too much, but it would reduce the size of the image. So that's a good example of how we used to embed matrices in order to work out what was going on in images, for example. And that just brings down the network size to a lot smaller, easier to manage, and the size of the image, of course. And then DALL-E, which is one of the funnest things. But I'm starting to get sick. I have to say, I'm starting to get sick of every project has a generated image of it. Maybe I'm getting a bit too sensitive to it, but you see lots and lots of things on the internet. Maybe we're just going through a phase at the moment, and eventually we'll start to do really nice graphics again, but everything is computer generated. But what I'm interested in is I think they've taken it off the Microsoft Learn, but there was this really great document that used to tell you how to do DALL-E images properly. So the sort of words that you could use to get something that was very unique compared to what everyone else was generating. I'll see if I can find that for you, but I think they took it down. But that was a really, really nice way to be able to put your branding on something for your projects. In IT, we want a little bit more jazzy sort of stuff these days. So let's have a look at creating that model. So you've probably seen this many times already, but we'll do it. So let's go in here. So all I did this morning was I was just going through and trying to work out some of the differences there. So one of the things I wanted to have a look at was the fine tuning. So I just started to do that and hit a roadblock. So one of the things you can see, I'm in the OpenAI Studio, and if you have a look at the model catalog, it's actually quite small in here. So it is only the OpenAI example. And then if you move to the, onto the other one there. No, I've got all of those. There it is, the services. What you'll see there in the AI Studio is you will see, I'm just going to go back to what I was doing before, was that you've got your prompt catalog. That's not what I wanted. Model catalog is a lot larger in here. So you can take a whole lot of other things and fine tune them. And you can do prompt flow in there as well for those. So there's a lot more to choose from than just OpenAI for that. But you can still go into Azure OpenAI from here and bring your own data, play, all that sort of thing as well. So you can still see completions in there, but I'm not sure who's using that. I'm not sure why they keep including it either. Okay, so maybe because some people do have the old version still. All right, so the first port of call, I suppose, is to go in here and create one. So what you really need to do is Azure OpenAI at the top. I didn't want to do that, sorry. Azure OpenAI. Oh, my nose is funny today. What one? I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Let's go back home and say create resources. This is how I typically want to do it. Azure OpenAI, and then that one didn't find anything, which is interesting. So let's just go back to OpenAI. There you go. You can see some of the trials and tribulations trying to find these services now. Azure OpenAI, go and hit create, and then you'll just have that resource group that you might have used before. Create the region. Now, regions are really, really important here. I know Australia was one of the few regions that actually got image very early on. Sweden seems to get everything. I don't know what Sweden do, but they seem to get all the best. I don't know how to explain that. They have got a really good quota for fine tuning as well. So there's lots and lots of documentation in Microsoft Learn to work out what regions have what. So we'll see if we can find that later. JR AI-102, what is it? Open AI, something like that, or Azure OpenAI. Call that number 2, and then a pricing tier standard. That's the only thing that is available standard at the moment. But when you start to deploy the models, there's a couple of extra things you can do. So you can have 2 different types of pricing models for that. So we'll talk about that too. You've got your security, and pardon me, and then you've got your, then we go and create. Excuse me for a minute. We've just set that off to create, and it's just creating that there. So it's pretty fast. You can go and download the template, I think it is, implementation. I just want to show you what it will look like when you first go in.
Yeah, I have a question waiting for you.
Go for it.
No, once you deploy it, and actually I can, well, I have one deployed from, maybe, that's what it said, from corporate agreement date. Maybe it will look different from your screen. Oh, it's the same. Cool. And straight away you got 2 studios. So that's my question.
So, do you want to just use OpenAI, or do you want to use some of the other models that are outside OpenAI, like the Mistrals, the Microsoft Phi, Llamas, Hugging Face, all those sorts of things? So you would go down one, you go down one of 2 paths. I don't know whether it's something contractual we have with OpenAI, or whether they're eventually going to merge this, but I haven't really got that impression that they're actually going to merge them yet. So it looks like we're keeping them separate for now. So the other one over here too, you can create projects, and you can bring in your other AI tools to use in conjunction with your large language model as well. So that's the other thing. So if we just launch both of them, you'll see it straight away.
Yeah, I've run a comparison myself. I can't tell the major differences. The IDE, or I tend to call IDE because I'm from the programming background.
Yeah, no.
IDEs look very similar. Yeah, probably it's just what you said about the OpenAI Studio is locked into OpenAI models, and while the other AI Studio is open to other types of whatever models. Because if you look at the left side of all the options, and if you put them side by side, to me it look quite similar. And yeah, that's what I meant the other day about all these IDEs. Sometimes I don't know where I am.
And they're very similar, and they've got a very similar look and feel. Yeah. So I suppose with that one, you'll see straight away. There's a couple of other things you can do in here. So, for example, you can do model benchmarking. So we've got some really good tools to test out the different models out there. So it's going to have the full set of large language models, and then you can benchmark them against each other. So we've got some really good benchmarking tools to actually that we've been using internally. So I think they've decided to share that with everybody. And you can see, if you wanted to just look at the Microsoft ones, for example, the Meta ones, that's going to give you the whole sort of picture. And we know that the OpenAI ones are better in a lot of ways. And we also know that the implementation for this is better in Microsoft in a lot of ways because it's just been there longer. They've actually done a lot more with it. So there's some Databricks ones as well you might be interested in, Habo, because you're using Databricks.
Yeah, Databricks has been promoting small models, and like their Dolly, and they say, you don't need a large cluster of GPUs because, the tokens number of tokens just of smaller, order of magnitude smaller. Oh, that's a cool feature. That one I didn't explore. That's a very good one, model benchmarks. So I'm seeing it on my screen right now. Yeah, thank you. That's great.
That's okay. It's good. I think there's also some tasks there, like question answer. I haven't used this one yet. So text generation, because you know how we said those newer versions of the text AI is actually using transformer technology or models in there. Now you can actually see these on there as well, which is interesting. I haven't really looked at those before.
Me neither. I thought they are, so we went straight into the OpenAI one, and instead of looking into this one, because the first look was very similar.
Yeah.
So we've been building RAG POCs and demos in the OpenAI studio, but I was wondering if this studio still got some merits or anything that is beyond the OpenAI studio. But what you showed is straight away, it's not existing in the OpenAI studio.
Yeah.
That could be a very good story to tell customers or internal teams about the performance of different models. Cool.
Yeah, so you can see the models there, the larger list as well. So just looking at the OpenAI versus this. It's a lot, and there's pages and pages of them. A lot of Hugging Face ones. Hugging Face stuff is good. I'm trying to learn more about it, but it's just so much bombarded with so much information, and we're trying not to specialize too much. So much information.
Exactly, that's the feeling, right? So when it was machine learning age, and you feel like you can specialize in something, and now when it's in the AI age, everyone's sort of putting new things or optimizing or improving. There's just so many different versions of models around, and you can't. I think I can't catch up with everything.
Yeah.
And then there's actually a huge amount of effort to go through your cognitive sort of capacity to really differentiate I would say tease out the signal from noise. There's so much noise in this space.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It is very, very hard to keep up to date with. I mean, full-time job just trying to keep up to date with it. I don't know people, how they do it.
Absolutely.
I don't. I can't.
I can't. When it comes to making recommendations or writing option papers for customers to understand, and it's just you have to put a disclaimer in the very beginning. Say this at the time of writing this paper. This is our understanding. This is what Microsoft position is. Because once the paper got released to a customer after a month, and then they come back and say, okay, there's some new things coming up. Um, this is ongoing options, and so it's an analysis paralysis. And
Yeah, definitely. Well, I suppose that's where you can use the benchmarking there to try and help.
That's exactly what I see. I thought, okay, Microsoft give us this, and we don't have to analyze too hard, and so we can just select the models of different categories, and then give you some idea. So at least you can pass your internal justification or auditing.
Yeah. So they've actually got groundedness and coherence here as well, fluency. There's a whole heap of stuff. So, and then it's got the list of them in order, so you can see Omni's, the most accurate. So that's pretty cool. There you go. You'll be able to tell that without.
Oh, absolutely. It will directly be usable in one of my paper. I think. I'll definitely look into it. Thank you so much. This is very helpful.
No, that's okay. It's good. All right. So I suppose the only other thing that is here, and this is also in the Azure Studio, Machine Learning Studio, is the fact that you can go and create prompt catalogs. Now, I haven't seen too much of prompt flow in here. That's why I was just thinking, I'm not seeing that too much. I wonder whether I've done something wrong there. But if we go to Azure Machine Learning, probably should have just gone in here. I'll just go in here instead. It's probably easier to find it. This is the one in particular I was thinking of that's going to stand out, that's only in Azure Machine Learning. But I must have done something wrong with AI Studio, because it's meant to be in there as well, which is the prompt flow. So the prompt flow there is all about taking an existing one. So if you go back to the home page, you'll see a whole lot of prompt flow. Oops. It used to show them at the top, but it stopped doing that. So you can see a whole lot of different prompt flow examples as well. So what that will allow you to do is put some structure around asking questions of something like Wikipedia. So if you were to go and clone that, I don't think I've got a clone of that at the moment. I'll start it off and we'll come back to it later. The cloning allows you to be able to, it'll have all the code required to actually use Wikipedia as the RAG model. So it will basically allow you to chat with Wikipedia only. So this is a really good way to, have different use cases for using prompt flow. And you'll see it is even though it is a low code interface, it's still got high code behind the scenes. So you actually see a lot of Python code with this when we go through it later. So that was the feature that I was thinking is not in any of the others. I suppose the other thing you can do is you can do automated ML and do lots of different things. So this model catalog, I'll have to wait for this to go, but the model catalog will include everything that's in AI Studio as well.
Yeah, I'm looking on my screen as well. I think that's definitely one that I would want more detail about. AutoML we've been using, right? So since like 6-7 years back, right? So AutoML, that's cool. Databricks now have AutoML as well. But prompt flow, it sounds like my naive interpretation from what you described was, is it like a RAG behind the scene?
Yeah. So, but it has a way to customize it quite heavily, because it publishes all of the Python code in a series of steps. See, the fact that I couldn't actually do this the other day, link services, I actually deleted my old one and recreated a new one recently because I was getting pinged for too many audit problems. And this one's actually locked down heavily, so I can't actually create a prompt flow, and I can't create the services for images either.
The connectivity. The
connectivity's not working. So I'll have to go back and find out why that is, but I could have shown you one of those.
Let me ask you a little bit more about prompt flow, because Azure Machine Learning Studio looks totally different from previously, right?
Yeah.
And now you have a huge amount of sort of a Gen AI flavor in it. So prompt flow, if that's a encapsulated low-code RAG feature, that means what we've been doing as creating RAG models or RAG sort of demos in the OpenAI side of things. So you actually have storage. You have to have storage. You have to upload all the files. You have to build the AI, search index, vector and vectorization index, all that stuff. is actually just, instead of doing over there, we should come over to to Azure Machine Learning Studio and try the prompt flow. Is that?
Well, maybe, but I think you can actually use it from this example here is using it from AI Studio. So prompt flow is available in AI Studio. For some reason, it's just not coming up. And it's probably because I have to create a project first. So we'll go through that and see whether I can get that to work in there. But AI Studio will have that as well.
Okay, let me check.
Yeah.
I'm in so many different studios now.
Yeah, I know, that's a confusing thing. So if I go to over here to AI Studio and pick a different server, so if I just go to AI Studio, so it's worth noting this out for everybody. I know this is sort of beyond what the course teaches, but I think it is worth noting out.
It's so valuable to us because we're really, we know how do things. We just want to get things done quicker and let more people get their hands on it. Because the RAG and deployment or construction now is sort of still having its barriers to tell people, what the vector index versus the normal index means, right? So and then all of a sudden you have people trying to understand similarity, cosine, that stuff. It's just beyond software engineering. And but if it's actually already a built-in feature somewhere, you can use. And the RAG is done behind the scene. And you can just chuck in the source files you want to, or source data you want the language model to retrieve on. And that will shorten the whole, experiment process very, very, very much.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's true. Yeah, no, that's good. So I could actually show you the prompt flow in here because... so we'll set it off running and then we'll come back to it when we get to that sort of part of the content. But in AI Studio, this is one I created a while back when I was first playing with AI Studio. You can see I've created a project and a hub. So it's just a matter of going through and the first time going and say new project and then create a hub. So if I go into that project, straight away you see a lot more options down the left-hand side and prompt flow is there as well. So I had this one earlier that I had. That's good because then you won't have to worry about creating it in Azure Machine Learning. Oh, there you go. Authorization has failed. So something has gone wrong with that. I'll go and create one, a new one. And as you can see, the look and feel is slightly different from Azure Machine Learning, but the idea behind it is still the same. You have this idea of a standard flow, chat flow, or an evaluation flow. And then you can scroll down and have a look at the different types of, for example, if you were using your RAG model with your own data, or whether you wanted to use something else. So you can see there's a lot more options here. Chat with Wikipedia. If I go and clone that, let's hope we have a little bit better result than what we did in Azure Machine Learning. No, I'm getting authorization error as well. So something's not quite right with my setup with security-wise. So it looks like I won't be able to show you that, but what I'll do is I'll try to get it to work at lunchtime and then see if I can show you that. So
that's all right. If this is actually beyond our original content, don't worry. I'll dig deeper. Just you pointed me to the right direction, I think.
Okay, all right.
That's where we got lost, very often because when you go in, you have new concepts and coming in. What does this mean?
Yeah.
And RAG, everyone's using RAG, but once you bring it into Microsoft AI and OpenAI context, what is the Microsoft's current sort of a encapsulation or abstraction on RAG?
Yeah.
So it feels to me that the prompt flow should be really looked into instead of us trying to build RAG after RAG based on our own knowledge, right? So
definitely.
So we're kind of crafting that.
Yeah, that's right. So I suppose I'll show you just a little bit because I usually try and demo that for people anyway. But you can see in this example what's happening. So you've got the flow itself and then you've got the different steps depending on what's happening. So they've got a joke and then they're echoing that joke using a Python command. But normally you would go in here and you would see different variables, different pieces of code for each step. And the other thing you need is you need to have OpenAI in conjunction with this. So if you're running that in AI Studio, that makes sense anyway, because you've probably created OpenAI for this. I'm not sure yet whether you can use it with other models yet. So Just take that one with a grain of salt, but you can actually see that what you would set up in that example I was using for chat with Wikipedia, there is actually 2 steps where you define the open AI and it will create a compute as well behind the scenes for you. So if we just have a quick look, I just want to be able to show you what some of the code looks like. There isn't a huge amount of code that they're showing. There's an example there. So they've picked up the joke one and they're saying the system prompt is, you're a bot that can tell good jokes, and then the user a joke about this topic, please. So you can see each one of the steps. I know this is a very simple example. Actually have the Python code. The one I do with Wikipedia is a lot more grandiose and a lot more code. So each one of those steps you can customize to your needs. You don't have to stick with the Wikipedia chat. You can then bend it to your SharePoint website, for example, if you want to do that. So lots of options there. All right, we delved straight into the details. So
cool. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
No, that's okay. That's good. So yeah, sometimes I get too excited by the detail and start to talk too much about it. Sorry about that. So using the prompt, of course, you can use it for lots of different things. So this is the completion prompts. And again, it doesn't matter if you're using chat or completion. Chat will actually do the completions for you as well. But basically, it could tell you what the things like were the sentiment, for example. So you can see a good example there where they've actually put sentiment as a cue as well in the prompt. So it will actually just fill in the blanks, which would be a completion, which is positive. You can also write poems, as you know. So you've probably seen all this before, so I won't spend too much time on it. What our trainers are using it for these days is developing a co-piloted experience when you actually do training. I try to put co-pilot in there as much as possible. Instead of asking the pre-canned examples, one of the things they do is create quizzes for the topic. Now, people have said, oh, the quizzes are a little bit too simple. So I suppose watch this space, but that's what we're trying to do, use Copilot more in our presentations. So that's pretty cool. All right, so the playground, just a couple of different things on the playground just to get started. Of course, you've seen the menu now, we've gone through that. This is where you put the system message in. You just got to remember to apply the changes and save when you put anything like a system message, or if you put in few-shot learning. So few-shot learning are the examples down here. So there's your system message, there's your examples, and you can put in a certain number of those to do that few-shot learning example so that you can ground your prompt, your LLM a lot better. Now, all of those require saves, but on the right-hand side, you can change these at any time. They don't need to be saved. What I would suggest, though, is clear chat, start over if you have done one of these, maybe might change. So you can see temperature, top P. These two are actually related quite heavily, and it's all about the randomness. And, of course, that was equivalent when you saw Copilot in the early days in Edge. You'll see Copilot had 3 different options there, whether you wanted to go, precise or the other extreme, which was a little bit more random and a little bit more fun. So, of course, adjusting those will change that. So there's also the maximum response that you want to retain because tokens in and tokens out, that all goes to affect your pricing there. And there's also this around stop sequences. So it's very similar to the way that you actually set up the large language models to begin with. So the large language models have different ways to actually work out the semantic meaning of a particular sentence. And of course, if you stop halfway through a sentence, it's going to lose that semantic meaning. So that's where it can't really tell what you're trying to do. So that's where you can actually change things so that it stops at a logical point. So after a paragraph, after a sentence, you make it do that. And of course, you've got the frequency penalty. So if you want things to be more imaginative, you don't want it to repeat as often, you can actually increase the penalty there as well. It also lets you know what the token count. But one thing that people often ask at this point in the course, I know we've got not too many people at the moment, but one of the things we often want to look at is how much is this going to cost us, right? So OpenAI token counter, there is a token counter in here that you can use at OpenAI that allows you to enter some sort of text like the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, and it will then tell you how that's basically. Now this is probably a pretty ordinary sentence because what it's showing you there in ChatGPT for Omni and Omni Many, so they've got some more language on the walls as well. You can actually see that it's one for one. So it's not giving you anything interesting. Punctuation counts as an extra token, by the way. So if you've got a question mark, leave that off. You don't need your question mark there. I know this is only small gains, but if you have a lot of things that have a lot of syllables in it, so misunderstanding, it will, well, that one actually was all one, but I don't know whether you can put in something more complicated than that. It looks to be looking at one-on-one for these sorts of things. So, yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of variation. Usually when I put this in, you would have a lot better examples. So let me see if I can grab some content of a prompt and see if we can put it in there just so that you get, well, there you go, what is prompt to write in the ultimate guide? Checking out random stuff on the internet is probably not a good idea. Let's copy something in like that, and I've missed the first letter, but that's okay. And let's see whether it's doing anything. So you can see the punctuation is taken as one there, unanticipated. So there's an example of something that has a few syllables in it, and it's broken that one into. So I was trying to find more things like that. Well crafted has split that into 3, which is very annoying. So that's basically working out, how many the tokenizer works there. So I'll just put that one in the chat window as well. And of course, when you have a look at the price calculator for Azure, then I never keep any links anymore. It feels like I'm just basically just search the internet for things now, because ChatGPT can usually find it pretty good as well. And I use Bing. I wean myself off Google and I use Bing now. So people think that's funny. So you've got this list here where you can go and check things out. And I'm just trying to see where is it? AI and machine learning maybe. And then bot services. Why can't I say it? There it is there. So then you can get an idea of using the price calculator. For example, depending on what region you are, Australia pays a lot more. I think we're very underprivileged here. But you can see, you can choose different models. Now, this was the 2 pricing options I was talking about. So we've had some anecdotal evidence that people saying that the provisioned versus the standard pay-as-you-go is a lot better way to go, because what they're doing is during the week, yes, they're using it quite a lot. And on the weekend, typically people weren't using it much. But now what they're doing is doing things like retraining, doing extra tests, checking over all of their content, all that sort of thing, and running that on the weekend. So people are anecdotally starting to say that you're better off with the provisioned option, but leave it up to you. A lot of people will dip their toe in the water with standard, and then they'll move to provisioned possibly later when they work out, is it actually more cost beneficial to actually do it that way. So you can see the number of hours there, pay as you go, 1 month reservation, so you do get a bit of a discount for that sort of thing as well. So there's a pricing calculator there. Just add your services into it, and that will help you with that calculation, because often I get a lot of questions about that at that point. All right, let's have a quick demo. So rather than you having to do that first lab, we'll just go and do some of those things. Where are we? wrong one. Do some of the things we talked about before. So let's go in. We've gone and created one very early, this one here, and it's pretty much blank. So I'm just going to go into the OpenAI Studio. A lot of the features are the same as you saw there with AI Studio, and you now know the differentiators. So I just go into the chat. Now, you will see that there is, although there's completions. I was going to say maybe they did remove it. There it is there. So in order for you to start doing stuff in the playground, you need at least one deployment. So you can see here, it doesn't have a deployment yet, so I only just created it today. So I'm going to go to deployments, and I'm going to say add deploy new model. But you can see here, you can also deploy models from Azure Machine Learning as well. So if you develop new models, you can do that as well. So fine-tuning new models and existing models. So let's have a look at 4, and we'll have a look through here, and it tells you what the variants do now, which is good because people weren't aware of what each one did and what the versions were. So it'll take you, that's a nice addition, I have to say. People are often confused with what to deploy, and that's because early days there weren't hardly any to deploy. But now you're getting some really nice information there. So whether it's Turbo with Vision, I actually used Turbo with Vision early on with those x-rays I talked about, and I was blown away by the fact it was really, I had trained that model in custom vision to do this, and out of the box this did this very successfully. So I actually bought in, I don't know whether we can do that again today, but I can always try, but I bought in the different checks x-rays for healthy, the ones for silicosis, and it actually predicted them. So I was very impressed with that. I uploaded 5 images, and it was able, with an unseen image, to work it out. Now, I was using ChatGPT before as a pipeline to call the custom vision service. So you can get it to lots of interesting things as well like that if you want, and I can sort of show you the code. I don't have any code on, it's all just local at the moment, but you can get an idea of the sort of things you want to do. So I'm just going to do GPT-4, just let's confirm, and waiting for that. So there again, is this going to be provisioned, or is this going to be something that's pay as you go? The terminology is slightly different there, which is interesting. The other thing to do is when you're working in your labs, just make sure you set this as a minimum of a maximum of 5 there. I think you can actually just keep going down until you hit 5. So you can, I was just hitting the left arrow, and then default context filter. I haven't created any content filters yet, so it's just going to use the one that's already there by default. So just go and create that, and now you can see you got the key over there as well. You can go and delete that if you want. The risks and safety, this is new, I haven't seen this before. So you can edit the content filter there, or you can go to content filters and create a new one. So we'll look at that again later as well. So going back to deployment, we have this one. So now I can come over to chat, and now that I have that, I'll just refresh that page. For some reason it's not picking it up. So chat. Hello, I gave you something. Why aren't you doing it? Well, this is a bummer. I did deploy that, right? There it is there. So go back to chat. Why aren't you working? That's very annoying.
Mine's working.
Yours working? You're lucky.
Yeah. I prayed to the God.
The demo guy. I think we'll get you share your screen.
Not a problem. I can actually share my screen.
Nah, it's all right. I'll see if I'll do another deployment and see whether that works.
Yeah, I think
there you go.
It's probably your connectivity and security. Someone's playing behind the scenes of all your Azure resources. Someone's someone's sort of reorganizing your Azure resources. That happened to me until I got my global admin access to our pre-sales account where I know, don't touch my environment.
I'm having lots of problems with the demo codes. Oh, that's all right. I'll go into the one I created before, and I don't know what's going on there, but it doesn't like me, does it? Go into chat, and there you go. I've got that. There you go. I got a 4 and a 3.5.
Oh, you have two, yeah. So it's such a bit of a lag. Yeah.
Bit of a lag. Well, I just chose another one. I don't know whether you noticed that. Just jiggery pokery. So there you go. You've got your 3.5 turbo and your 4, and now I can start to ask it questions. So even if I was to just say, "How are you today?" it's probably going to get cranky with me. I don't have any feelings usually. That's what it talks about. Leave a chat and say, "What is the?" I don't know. Can you ask it math questions?
I've done that before. I think it's not necessarily better than humans.
Yeah.
If you ask, like, say, how do you, let's say, 11 divided by 9, what's the answer? That sort of stuff.
2 days. Oh my God. Oh, 9/11. Oh, that's bad, isn't it? We picked a very bad particular one. But yeah, divide 10 by 5. Yeah, you're all right with that. But maybe not some of the others. Yes, it could have a few problems with maths, I think. The later versions are getting better, but yeah, there can be a little bit of problems. So I suppose the first thing you see there is what do you want to be able to do. So we'll say you are a Python expert. Say, continue. I wonder whether if we ask it a more pointed question, whether it's going to get it to work. So can you show me examples of Python used in prompt flow? Seeing as we were obsessed with prompt flow before, and I'm obsessed with it not working. There you go. That's not an example, but anyway, it's got prompt user. So it's not usually using prompt flow, which is the product that's in AML and AI Studio. So there you go. You can see some just some prompts there. Not exactly what I wanted. Can you show me ways to use the OpenAI SDK in Azure with Python? I shouldn't even have to say Python, should I? There you go. So there's an example where they're setting up the different codes, making sure you do your pip install, all that. So I don't think that looked right anyway, but you get the idea. So the other thing you could do is you could start to add things in here. So one of the nice one you can have is you are a journalist. And these might be, again, we're saving it as we go. We'll clear the chat. This might be a really nice one to try out. So add a section. So we're going to do examples. They've got a couple of extra options in here. Safety system message. I haven't used that before. And you can have variables as well now. So that's pretty cool. So this is what I was referring to as few-shot learning before when I said you can take your Q&A and plug it into here. So we have this example where the Dodgers played well last night, and we could say that is sport. So that's how we want it to answer that question. So save that one. And then you might have something like another example saying Trump is in yet another state giving rallies. I don't know whether I spelled that right, and that's politics. And then we'll add another section there of examples, and we'll say hurricane hitting Florida coast, and that's going to be weather. So now I'm going to have trouble trying to think of another example. So let's hit save. And then now that it knows how to answer some of those questions, we can say, I wanted to find out more about Astrals. This is not a restaurant that exists anymore. Restaurant, and then it will basically then say the category. So this is a really nice way to train it to actually get it to answer how you want to answer it in a nice crisp way to actually do something like food and dining there. So you're actually giving it a title to every question and answer that you had. It now knows how to answer that question a lot easily. So you can also bring cues. So one of the other ones are coda. So let's just save that and remove the others. So bin those. Save. And with that one, we can now say, let's clear the chat. I'm not sure when okay, I have an Adventure Works database, and we'll call it DW 2020. So it knows of this one because it was trained on information from GitHub, and we know that database has actually got a lot of information in it because we use it for our Power BI courses, for example. So I have an AdventureWorks database. Can you tell me how many employees work for AdventureWorks? And then I would say select. So I'm giving it a cue there to say select, and now it said select count staff and total employees from that. Now, of course, and it's owned by the DBO user, which is a default user. So with that one there, when I do that, it's basically given a cue as to what it wants to see, but it also knows of the AdventureWorks database. So I might actually say, forget that. I don't know whether it's going to forget that. It apologise, that's not. It always makes me smile, I think. I love having conversations with it, to be honest. Let's talk about another database. I have a bank. It includes suppliers, tables that are suppliers, involved parties. Be interesting to see how it works out that because it's got space in it, whether it puts quotes around that. Suppliers. That's not there, right? Vendors, customers, and employees. I want to select from all these tables. They all have a first name and last name column. Can you do that? I'm not even going to tell it the select this time. Okay, so did a union. So it pretty much knew what I was trying to do. It knows that those tables are, but I've had to give it a lot more information. And the reason I had to give it a lot more information is because that's not a known database. It's one of your, private databases that you would have at work. So it can pick up some things. A really good one for AdventureWorks for examples, and then you can see it can do SQL. So this used to be called completions, and what you'll notice here with completions is I won't be able to do any completions because, actually, there you go. It's actually resurrected. So it's actually saying I can use DaVinci for that. So they've given us an out on this, which is good. They're allowing us to be able to do that. So it's good to see that they've given completions another attention there, a bit of attention, because for a while you couldn't even call it because there weren't any deployed any models that you could deploy to use it. So that's a nice one as well. So Habo, were you just putting something in the chat, or did you want to ask a question?
Oh yeah. So that's exactly what you're showing us, because I think the if you give examples and let the model to complete code for you, or a poem for your completion can do similar things.
Yeah.
So that's That's cool. I still have two, but it's sort of like even for us working in this frontier area, and we actually constantly having questions about when should we use what, and how should we sequence these services together to have the optimal, most efficient and cost-effective solution, right? Because there are so many overlapping capabilities being developed, almost like the critical path or minimal path to success.
Yeah.
It is currently quite a well, I would say still like a huge amount of exploration. And there's I think it's almost pervasive. It's not like you ask anyone who is working in AI, especially having this level of knowledge that okay, what is the best pathway of connecting all the services and using what capabilities are enabled in which environment and to do what. It's almost like it depends.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, that's the go-to consultant answer, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not
I try not to use that answer. Sometimes it does depend.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to cost. Different models have different behaviors and different consumption costs. So it's almost like if we want to move forward and make this AI workloads more and more production AI workloads based on Azure. Something needs to happen to consolidate this. Yeah. Otherwise, we constantly being questioned.
Bombarded with new stuff.
Yeah, and from both sides. One from Microsoft having new things coming out, and another is from customers saying, "Okay, you guys are experts. Tell us what is the best way of putting things together and for our use case."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Yeah. So, and you can see this one's actually far